Political violence is real. Now, it's probably not as rampant in our country as the press would have you believe. I mean, for instance, every mass shooter is always a Trump supporter or a believer in QAnon conspiracies. Not true. Most of them are just complete lunatics. But it is real, and we should always be on the lookout. Now, there's nothing new here. We can go all the way back to 44 BC. Julius Caesar was murdered as a part of a conspiracy of a bunch of guys thinking if they could get rid of him, they could return to the Roman Republic of old. But probably the best example of political violence and the why of political violence is at Christmas time, because we remember Jesus. And he's the best example. Now, Christmas Day, is when we remember that Jesus, who is God, came to the earth, was born as a baby. But the whole Christmas story is really his whole life and the meaning behind him. As he lived his life, we know him as a great teacher. He took care of the poor, healed the sick, and fed the hungry, did incredible miracles. And it was that led to the problem. You see, he became a threat to the local politics of the time. I think the greatest miracle he ever did was at the end of his life, when he raised a man by the name of Lazarus from the dead. Now, Lazarus had been dead for 4 days. He was already buried. So a bunch of people witnessed this. He raised Lazarus, brought him back to life. A bunch of the people looked at Jesus and said, man, this guy's cool. I think I'm going to follow him. Others, though, said, you know what? We need to report this to the Sanhedrin. That's the local political body, the government of the time. And the Sanhedrin, just like our Congress, was made up of 2 parties, Republicans and Democrats. Now, okay, they weren't called that. They were the Sadducees and Pharisees. But they were similar in the sense that they did not agree on anything, and they fought to the death the smallest of issues. But it was amazing they came to agreement on what to do with Jesus. Now, when this is going on, Caiaphas, who was the Nancy Pelosi of the time, he was Speaker of the House, and he literally called together a meeting of the Sanhedrin at his house, which was a palace. They only had one agenda: what to do with Jesus. They deliberated, and after a while, Caiaphas, in typical Nancy fashion, just interrupted, said, all right, stop this. Here's what we have to do. Jesus has to die. And here's what you need to understand as the reason and the why behind political violence. You see, Jesus was a threat to their political power. The Roman Empire, which included all of Israel at that time, they had a deal with the Romans. And so the Romans is what gave power to the Sanhedrin, even wealth. And somehow Jesus and this growing number of followers threatened that power. So he had to die. They were successful in their plan. And it was incredible. He didn't just die. He was literally crucified, the most horrendous, torturous death you could go through at that time. And it took usually days to die. And so you were done. It was done in public, and so people could come by, talk to you. They could spit on you, throw rocks at you. Or in Jesus' case, his own mother could come and talk to him. It was awful. The reason for this was not just to kill people, but to humiliate them and to humiliate their followers and shut that thing down. Side note, didn't work, that part of it, because I go every week to a church and worship Jesus here 2,000 years later. But again, at Christmas time, just remember where the political violence come through. And I hope that you can join me in worshiping Jesus.